But as he was pursuing this, he wasn't coming at it from the standpoint of anti-Darwinism. In fact, he had been a Darwinist for most of his life. I mean, he reconciled the two in his mind and said, well, you know, in the Bible we're not quite sure how God created, and, you know, I don't know what he had come to justify that. So he had inside of him the part where he believed in God, believed in Jesus, and he still believed in Darwin. So that was no problem for him. But then as he was looking at things, he began to be puzzled occasionally by things that just didn't fit. But actually, how it does what it does and displays all that up there, it's like, I don't know. There's something about bits and bytes. I don't know exactly what it does, but, you know, it gets up on the screen somehow. It's just a black box. It's just there. And they get really small, right? I practically got them in your phone and surfing the internet on your phone, and so how complex can these little things be? They're just some little thing there. I don't know. Zap some electricity through it. I don't know how it works, but it does. So that's kind of how it was like with cells, except they thought they were much more basic. Turns out that cells are much more complex than the most complex engineering thing that anybody has ever done anywhere. In fact, cells are often compared to factories, and I have a couple quotes here. You can see if I can find them in a realistic time frame. I thought was interesting looking at, and these are quotes from non-Christians, people who are just regular biochemists or whatever it is they do. So here's the first quote. This is from Bruce Alberts. He's the president of the National Academy of Sciences. He would be, of course, a devout Darwinist. He said, "We have always underestimated the cell. The entire cell can be viewed as a factory that contains an elaborate network of interlocking assembly lines, each of which is composed of a set of large protein machines. Why do we call them machines? Precisely because, like machines invented by humans to deal efficiently with the macroscopic world, these protein assemblies contain highly coordinated moving parts." Okay, so here's another quote from a biochemist. It says, "We should reject, as a matter of principle, the substitution of intelligent design for the dialogue of chance and necessity." So he says, you know, just by principle, we've got to discard the possibility of there being intelligent design. Just can't even consider it. We throw it out. He says, but we must concede that there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any biochemical system. There's not one. It says only a variety of wishful speculations. Okay? So this is a statement of somebody who says intelligent design cannot even be considered. He is an ardent evolutionist, but he still at least has the honesty to admit that there is no known account or mechanism of any biological system that accounts for their evolution. There's none. They don't even have a beginning to start with. He says there's only a variety of wishful speculations. So that's pretty strong language. So another one, in talking about the cell, here's a description of a single cell organism with a cell, of a cell, single cell. So it's like a high-tech factory complete with artificial languages and their decoding systems. So you've got the DNA and then the ability to decode that. The memory banks for information storage and retrieval, elegant control systems regulating the automated assembly of parts and components, error fail-safe proofreading devices utilized for quality control, assembly processes involving the principle of prefabrication and modular construction, and a capacity not equaled in any of our own most advanced machines, for it would be capable of replicating its entire structure within a matter of a few hours. So the cell is extremely complex and extremely, there's so many parts involved, and it is like a factory. It's like not even a single machine. There's lots of machines that are working inside of a cell to do all these things. And it's so complex, it's hard to even deal with. Each one of the little components in a cell is so complex. So what Michael Behe did is he started looking at some of the components of a cell. So he first started looking at cilia, the hair around a paramecium, and then like the flagella, the things that move some of them along. So when he was looking at cilia, they seem like, a pretty simple little thing. We've got them like lining our esophagus, helps get stuff trapped down in our lungs out. So they push, so they're not just little hairs, they have a function to move things around. And it turns out, you would think, okay, take a simple thing like this hair. How hard could it be to develop that, okay? So if it was by evolutionary process, you would have to take and somehow incrementally, by small modifications, get to the point where these base proteins and base little things can develop into one of these cilia. Well, the thing is that even this tiny little thing like a cilia, it has these small amount of requisite parts. So there's rods, linkers, and propeller proteins. There's 3 required parts, and the rods in the cilia have to be put together in just the right way, and the linkers hold them together, and then there is a protein that will make it move, okay? So the thing is that if you take any one of those out, the whole thing won't work. And in fact, by, the whole principle of evolutionary development is that there's small incremental improvements. So let's just say you got one of these things, and the possibility of getting one thing into place is difficult, right? Like doing the swoosh across the buffalo back with a rock, that just happened. That's hard. But then when you add in a couple other parts, the probability of that happening just becomes really improbable, because they all have to happen at the exact same time. So like with this, there would have to not be any other things that would come and kind of mess up the diagram. Some other rock that would, kind of right over the top of it. So you'd have to have them all happening at the same time. So what happens like with a cilia, if you don't have the rods, or you don't have the linkers, or you don't have the protein, it's a non-functioning entity. So it either won't hold together. If you don't have the linkers, it will fall apart, or if you don't have the rods, there's nothing there to physically move, and if you don't have the protein, it's not going to move. So if you had any of those, if you had this part there without those 3 components being in place, then not only is it not helpful, but now it's a hindrance.